rand?
Well, you've seen a certain drop really from 12.55 or so for the South African rand right through to around 12.80 at some stage as well. It is bound to affect it tremendously, and that is bound to have a secondary impact as well on inflation, moving on to a point in time where the South African Reserve Bank needs to make a decision on interest rates. Whether indeed that translates into higher interest rates is yet to be seen. There are quite a few factors that still go into that, but I think the Monetary Policy Committee will certainly be looking at that and other elements as well. Of course, geopolitical tensions, as you said, will mark the key factors for international trade and how markets are faring on that front, but it's been a relatively green board across this week thus far. Let's take a look at how European and other markets are trading. Well, as you would have seen, the All Share there doing pretty well this afternoon. It is a green day across the JSE and most of Europe as well. But the question is, what is driving those markets? Leigh Riley, who is wealth manager at Alpha Wealth, joining us today. Leigh, thank you so much for the time. There isn't much really going on the news front, and yet we're still seeing some green. Why is it so quiet, and what is actually going on?
Yeah, I think, given the landscape we've just come out of, fairly busy earnings season. No surprises that we're entering a bit of a consolidatory phase now. And, I think most of the networks will be looking for where the information is going to be coming from, and whether that's locally, whether it's from Trump, the potential for trade wars, whether it's news around MTN. As you said, the MPC going to have to make some tough decisions, perhaps feeling like they pulled the trigger a little bit early on dropping interest rates a couple of months ago. Sure. But no surprises, really. I think it also really emphasizes the fact that we cannot just get completely caught up in Ramaphoria, as some of the pundits have called it. We actually need some kind of policy change. We do need some kind of bolstering for the economy to get us to where we need to be. And interesting to see how the rebound in agriculture and industrials previously has actually been the sector that's come off so drastically this time round. So maybe a little bit premature in terms of where the rand got to over December through to now. We've also had a very, very weak dollar throughout pretty much the whole of 2017, being one of the most undervalued major currencies. So coming into the first half of this year, maybe no surprises that with rising interest rates in the United States, we've seen a bit of a rebound in the dollar. Rand started to come off a little bit, but I think it really does just emphasize that maybe our existing cabinet and leadership have just got a really, really long way to go before we start seeing some proper stability.
But they always say that it is darkest before dawn, and perhaps there is in ushering that new dawn for South Africa's economy. Yes, the political sphere might have changed a little bit, but it means that there's still a lot of hard work that still needs to come through in order for the economy then to follow through.
Absolutely, and I think as an investor or as a trader, I think it's very important to keep your eye on the narrative in the longer term and not to be caught up in the noise on a quarterly basis right up to anything less than sort of 3 years. I think you've really got to consider, if you are concerned about capital, or if you are concerned about preservation, or where you're going to get your yield from, what is your 3, 5, 10-year narrative, and making sure that you can control all of the sort of emotional swings that you're going to get, even within the course of a couple of weeks. I mean, we were just saying earlier, we can't believe that we're 6 months later sitting in a scenario where North Korea is not firing missiles at somebody. We thought that was going to escalate drastically. So things can turn around fairly rapidly in that respect. but I think we've just got to be cognizant of, where do you see that narrative and how does it play out in your plan?
Big shift in the rand that we saw after those GDP numbers yesterday. Even bond yields in South Africa, those are quite critical as well. 8.68%, that's just for the R186. But in general, the appetite for South African equities, the rand, even our bonds, surely that's beginning to wane a little bit more.
Yeah, I think we've been on the negative side for the last 2 to 3 years anyway. So I think if you speak to a lot of bond traders and equities traders, I mean, if we see what's happened with some of the layoffs of the JSE in the last year, that is, to my mind, specifically because of the low volumes that we've been seeing. And it's alarming to see the amount of inflows relative to GDP that we have in South Africa, which is no real surprise. But are we reacting in the same way as any other emerging market? Yes, more than likely. Are we kind of the best of the worst at the moment? Yes, more than likely. So if you compare us to the likes of, Turkey, Russia, Brazil, India, anywhere else like that, we've still got fairly strong structures, in particular in the fiduciary and the financial sector. That makes us attractive. But were we perhaps trading at elevated yields unnecessarily? Probably. So this is probably where we should have been a while ago, prior to the downgrades that we got. I think we've just got to be vigilant of it. And I think when we start seeing those big moves in some of the counters or some of the bonds, I also think that's indicative of the lack of volume, because the moment that there's not enough prices there to prop up the price, or with enough bids or offers to prop up the price, the moment there's a knee-jerk reaction, the price falls away and we get these really volatile and big moves.
Let's talk about equities very, very quickly as my last one. That MTN raid by the Hawks, what's that said to do on their share price? What's that said to do for the company? And the difference then between when we had the Nigeria debacle a few years ago to what we're seeing now?
Yeah, so I think a bit of a storm in a teacup. We've had the Hoffman report that came out prior to this. The CEO has come out and said that on 3 or 4 different reports or fronts, they've noted that there's really been no change relative to where the Turkish competitors come out and made these accusations. What I do like, and I think what we mentioned earlier in the private conversation, was the fact that the exec are so fast to turn around this time. Something that we didn't see when the Nigeria debacle was unfolding, was that they were just really slow to get around to addressing the issues. So depending on how you feel as a shareholder, I mean, they were up 0.5% today last time I checked. So at this stage, it doesn't seem to be having a material effect on the share price.
Leigh Riley, thank you so much for the time. Oil as well, it is moving up, but it isn't going anywhere really. It's still hovering within that $80 a barrel mark. So that'll be a key question and something to look out for as well as we head into the remainder of the week and the latter parts of this week as well. But 12.79 for the rand. Look, considering where we stood around 2016, at the latter ends of 2016, this is still a relatively good figure. But of course, the rand is in itself going a little bit lower. Where it ends up, we're yet to find out. We'll get back to Nzinga and Nompu just after this.